So I recently sold my Sony A7S III for this camera, the Sony ZVE1. In today's video, I'm going to be telling you my top 5 reasons of why this camera is the best buy for YouTube, as well as the 3 major cons that may steer you away from this camera. As for the recording of this video, this camera is currently being sold of about $18.99 with just the body. And Sony does also offer a bundle with a 28 to 60mm kit lens for about $2,200, which I don't recommend buying just because you will quickly grow out of that lens and there's currently way too many options that are way better. Okay, I know some of you may argue that the FX3 or even the Sony A7S III are way better video cameras, but at almost twice the cost of this camera, I still think that this is the best bang for buck camera for content creation. So this camera basically has the same sensor as both those cameras, but in a more compact vlogging camera body, which then leads me to my next reason: image quality. The Sony ZVE1 has exceptional low light performance with a 2 native ISOs of about 640 and 12,800 for S-Log3, and it also offers a 12 megapixel sensor with minimal rolling shutter performance. This shoots up to 4K 120 frames per second at 422 10-bit recording with minimal cropping. The same picture profile and color science can be seen. This camera has all the best video quality features that Sony has to offer, and ever since I got this camera, this has been filming all of my talking head videos as well as shooting all of my B-roll for this channel throughout this past month. So let's talk about the built-in features. First of all, the autofocus system is next level. So because of Sony's new AI chip and the new deep learning technology in this camera, it's able to perform subject recognition and tracking, which now includes animal, bird, insects, car, train, and airplane autofocus. The onboard microphone is actually pretty good. I still recommend using a dedicated microphone for the best sound quality for this camera, but I'd say the onboard microphone is usable when you're in a pinch. So also the in-body stabilization is next level. Not only does it give you the standard and active stabilization, this also offers the new dynamic active stabilization, which gives you almost gimbal-like footage. Although it does give you a substantial crop on the image, the stabilization is pretty good for capturing quick B-roll shots when you're out and about. So Sony has truly designed a ZVE1 with creators in mind. The truly touch-enabled flip screen, intuitive controls, and next-level autofocus make shooting seamless. Features like auto-framing, which makes it feel like you have your own camera person with you. There's also CineVlog, but basically puts horizontal black bars in your footage, which changes your aspect ratio from 16:9 to a 2.35:1 ratio, and then automatically changes your frame rate to 24 frames per second and color to S-Cinetone. I personally wouldn't use this feature since I prefer doing this during post, but I can see a lot of beginner vloggers using this feature. Plus, it's quick and easy and you can make your own footage look cinematic without editing. So the camera also enables you to upload custom LUTs, which is great when you're shooting S-Log3. This gives you an idea of what your footage will look like in post. So the last reason is portability. The ZVE1 is incredibly light and compact, making it a dream for vloggers and creators on the move. And since this camera is small and compact, I'm able to be more discreet when I'm filming in public. Also, you're less of a target as far as theft, since this setup won't look as expensive as the Sony Alpha camera bodies. I guess one of the benefits of a more plastic body is the weight. This is probably the lightest full frame camera at only about 483 grams. In comparison to the A7 IV, which is about 700 grams, that's a pretty good weight savings in my opinion. Although these 5 reasons may have convinced you to buy this camera, but unfortunately, there are 3 major cons that you need to know. So the first major con of this camera is the overheating during prolonged takes. From my experience, I've only had this camera overheat on me twice. I would say approximately 40 to 50 minutes long at room temperature inside my office, and I was filming at 4K 24 frames per second at 422 10-bit using H.265, and I even had the flip out screen out away from the body. Besides those 2 cases, I haven't really had any issues with overheating. The small and compact nature of this camera body was really designed for capturing short takes, so depending on how you plan on using this camera, do keep this issue in mind when filming longer takes. Another con is the lack of custom buttons and dials. So when I first started using this camera, I noticed that there's a lack of the front dial, which I usually program to change my aperture, but luckily all of my lens has an aperture ring so I can physically change it on the lens. Also, this only records in one SD slot, so there's no dual recording whatsoever. I wouldn't recommend using this camera in a professional setting like a wedding or events where it's one take. In those cases where you need redundancy in case of an SD failure. It's happened to me personally once where I had one of my Lexar cards fail on me. Luckily, it was in a professional setting. Also, another con is that it only has a micro HDMI instead of a full-size HDMI. And lastly is the lack of a viewfinder. That's one of the things I really miss on the Sony A7S III, especially when you're filming outside on broad daylight. The EVF comes in super handy. The ZVE1 does have a cheaper build quality in comparison to Alpha bodies. It's mostly made of plastic, which has been chosen to keep the cost of the camera down. I could be wrong in this, but I could see this camera showing its age more quickly than my Sony Alpha cameras. Overall, I think the Sony ZVE1 is a no-brainer for me, since this camera does one job, which is to create content for my YouTube channel. I have the Sony FX3 and the A7R5, which are my professional bodies for paid gigs. For me, having a dedicated camera for content creation has helped me streamline my process and made it easier to create content for this channel. Let me know in the comments below if you agree or disagree with me. If you found any value in this video, give me a like, subscribe, and now we'll see you in the next one.